As the snow fell thick and fast, the little Dubois children were battling the freezing snow and ice as they rushed home from their grandparents' house. They had spent the day celebrating the Yuletide festivities. They sang songs around the tree, filled their tummies with sweet treats, told fantastical stories by the fire, and of course, exchanged gifts. A set of jauntily painted toy soldiers for Francois, silk ballet slippers for Marie, and an artfully crafted, hand-carved chess set for Philippe. The day had been dusted in sugar-plum perfection. Yet the children had run afoul to the short winter days and were now rushing to get home in the faded light. They were slowed by their little legs and the need to take turns carrying the tiny Francois. Laden with gifts and fighting against the ferocious, biting wind, the children were now traveling in complete darkness. Their feet were solid blocks of ice, their noses a streaming fall of winter drip, and their eyes struggled to keep the snow from settling on their lashes. Francois cried, Marie comforted, and Philippe boldly led the trio through the dense evergreen forest. Mixed into the screaming wails of the wind were the ominous howling of wolves, hungry and on the hunt for sustenance. Owls hooted warnings high above their heads, and the branches of the trees whispered their own secretive censures. The children could see little, but heard much. Disoriented by the cold, the fear, and the dark, Philippe was beginning to fear that the trio had become lost, turned around on themselves. The biting chill of panic began to fall over the children. That is, until Marie saw a cluster of golden lights in the distance. Was it their home? Anxiously, the children hurried to the welcoming glow. But as they approached, they were crestfallen to realize that this wasn't their home, but rather an empty storefront. A shop here, in the middle of the woods. As the children contemplated the conundrum, the wind climbed to a tempestuous proportion and pushed the children through the front door of the mysterious building. The shop was warm, bright, and smelled of copper and sulfur. Large silver hooks hung from the ceiling. A wide display counter ran across the middle of the room, and gleaming knives clung to the walls with magnetic energy. It was clearly a butchery, but all of the meat was missing. No beef in the smoker, no sausages by the grinder, no pork in the salting tubs, and no duck drying on the hooks. As the three children stood in the middle of the shop floor, staring at the naked shelves where stock should sit, out of the back room came a large man with a great salt and pepper beard, hands like ham hocks, and a smock covered in blood and ominous deep brown stains. "Hello, little ones," greeted the man through fat sausage lips, his teeth yellow and black like kernels of flint corn. A pitted aberration of a tongue slid across his dusky lower lip. "Good evening, sir," Philippe replied. "We seem to have lost our way in the woods, and we're hoping you could point us in the direction of town." "Oh, I see. I most certainly can, but it's far too treacherous for you to be out there in these conditions. Why don't you stay here a while? Sit by the fire. Have a hot chocolate. Warm your hands and feet." Instinctively, Francois called out with glee, the offer of comfort and warmth too delicious to pass up. Philippe and Marie exchanged concerned looks. "What? Are you scared, children? I assure you, whatever fears you may have about me pale in comparison to the very real dangers of the creatures and the elements out there. With a long and decided sigh, Philippe agreed that the trio would stay, just for a few moments. Long enough to warm up, let the wolves pass, and allow the wind to die down. As the three made their way to the promise of fire and cocoa in the back room, the butcher followed, carving knife in hand. Tomorrow morning, his shelves would be flush with fresh provisions, just in time for Christmas. Hey friends, it's Becca. For the past 3 years, the West London Witch team have been dedicated to bringing you the best supernatural stories at the highest studio quality. And by team, I mean me and my buddy Danny. We do this work totally for free because we love it. We're proud of our content and appreciate the wonderful interactions we get to have with storytellers and listeners just like yourself. If you're enjoying the West London Witch, maybe consider joining our Patreon. It's a way to further engage with us and show your support for two creatives. If you're in a position to spare enough each month for us to grab a cup of coffee in between edits or add to the piggy bank for a new microphone, we would love to see you in our Patreon community. But I know times are tough, so if you're not in a position to join Patreon right now, that's okay. We aren't going anywhere. Head on over to patreon.com/The West London Witch. For as little as £1, $1, €1 a month, you can gain full access to our coven, a space where we share behind-the-scenes stories, dive deeper into each episode, answer your questions, and have special little treats to thank you for sharing your love and kindness with your favorite little witch. Happy Christmas and welcome to episode 84 of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. Season's greetings, my friends. As we begin to embark on the 12 days of Christmas, I wanted to take you back to the origins of this beloved holiday season. Although the world around you may be covered in tinsel and twinkle lights, we will be journeying to a darker, more primal, and truly terrifying time. Jeff Belanger was the king of Halloween until he realized that the true ghosts and ghouls don't come out until the frosty, shadowy fingers of winter grip the earth. You may remember Jeff from episode 57, The Possession of Roland Doe. But tonight, the demons he speaks of are of the seasonal variety. Jeff is the author of The Fright Before Christmas, Surviving Krampus and Other Yuletide Monsters. This collection of Christmas beasts is equal parts terrifying and frightfully well presented. So cuddle up close to the fire, my friends. Clasp your hands around a sweet mug of cocoa and keep your feet tucked into your woolen patchwork quilt as we step into the most frightening time of the year. I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is The West London Witch, Episode 84, The Fright Before Christmas.
So it was a very cold early December day, and I was hanging Christmas lights in front of my Massachusetts home, and I was putting a wreath on my front door. And the wreath was fake, plastic berries, plastic, evergreen, the whole thing. And I had this really old rusted crafting wire, and I was wiring it up to my door knocker. And all of a sudden, the wire broke, and the wreath hit the ground, and I screamed out, "Humbug!" Which is what I would have screamed out if it was like 200 years ago, but it was actually a much more colorful word that escaped my mouth, and I was just like furious. I'm just like, I'm so cold. Why am I out here doing this? I know my dad put a wreath on his front door, and his dad did too. Why the wreath? Why the evergreens? Why December 25th? Why Santa Claus? Why the lights? Why do we go through so much trouble? Why do we go through so much effort, money, and stress for this one day? Why Santa? Why? I'm a paranormal guy, right? What am I even doing at Christmas? I should skip it. But then I remembered this Andy Williams song lyric, his most famous Christmas song. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. And I went, scary ghost stories? I don't recall that from my childhood. Did something miss me? And so I wanted to understand how I got there on my front porch, cold, fingers numb, trying to put up Christmas lights and things like that. And so I started to dive into the holiday, and it took me to a dark, dark place. It turns out Halloween, which had previously been my favorite holiday, is just the warm-up act for the most frightening holiday of the year. Halloween has ghosts, sure, and I know that scares some people, but Christmas has monsters. Monsters that will kill you and your children. They're out there hunting us. It's the most frightening time of the year, and that's how all this was born. You have to understand the fear first.
All over the globe, we recognize 4 major seasons marked by holidays: spring, summer, autumn, and winter.
And then halfway between them are the half holidays. For example, Samhain, the Celtic New Year. Halloween is halfway between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. That is kind of like the sun setting on the year.
So if Halloween is the sunset, that means that midwinter or Yule time is the dead of night.
And that is the most frightening time. When you live in northern climates where it gets cold, you realize that winter kills everything. It kills the grass, it kills the flowers, it kills the trees, it kills the ponds and the lakes. They freeze solid. It kills everything. And if you're stuck outside, it's going to kill you too. And the winter solstice is the shortest day, it's the longest night, and if you live far enough north, you're not even sure if the sun is going to rise again. It is a petrifying, scary, scary time. And when you're looking down the barrel of that gun and all that doom, you have a few choices. You can just cry in despair, or you can do what humans typically do. We party. We party down. We party down. And that's how this was born.
Nobody parties like ancient Romans, and winter for them was a time of festivities. Saturnalia was the annual Roman celebration for the god Saturn, the deity that ruled over farming, harvests, and agriculture. For a week, from December 17th to the 23rd, Romans would party, praise, and thank Saturn for the year's yields.
So you would celebrate the harvest, you would thank him for that, you'd turn society on its ear. You would, the masters would be the servants could be the masters, you could make fun of people, there was no work, no courts, no schools. It was just partying, giving gifts, making merry, feasting, and just celebrating everything there was to that time of year. Because you knew, now you have fresh wine, fresh beer, fresh meat, and your harvest, but also you're about to hunker down for the most dangerous season. And that's winter. And then you go further north, and our Nordic ancestors called it Yule, right? But the same idea. They would pass around a drinking horn, and each of us would drink from the drinking horn, signifying that we're all equal this time of year. We have to put our differences aside because we know winter's going to be tough. If my roof collapses under the snow, I might be knocking on your door looking for shelter. And vice versa. If your roof collapses, you're going to need my help. If you run out of food, you might need my help, and vice versa. So we need to make amends. We need to put our differences aside and be friends, at least until the spring, and then we can go back to hating each other.
Now let's head north to our Nordic friends. Winter in the northern reaches is perpetually dark, cold, desolate, and quiet. That is, until it isn't.
So imagine if you're up in the Nordic part of the world where it's completely frozen and you hear sounds outside, sounds you don't hear the rest of the year. And you wonder if it's just the wind whipping through the naked skeletal trees, or if it's the screaming cries of the vanquished spirits as the Norse god Odin chases them down on his wild hunt at night. And you're scared. You're scared hearing those sounds and looking out at that landscape. But when you do look out at that landscape, there is one little glimmer of hope. You see a tree that didn't die. You see there's a few types of trees that don't die. They stayed green. The evergreen, the holly bush, right? These trees defied winter. And so we take those branches and we put them over our doors and windows in the hopes that those prickly needles will keep the bad spirits out and keep the good cheer inside. We might even bring the tree inside as an act of defiance to show the world, right? Hey, if the tree can make it through winter, I can make it through winter. This will bring me some luck. This will bring me good fortune. It's sacred. It's so sacred that when we're fortunate enough to make a kill outside, kill a deer or an elk or something that'll give us meat for a little while, we'll take the entrails and drape them around the evergreen as an offering to that tree. And also turns into food for other animals to pick clean. And next time you're hanging garland on your Christmas tree, I want you to think about that. You're participating in a very ancient and gory ritual. So you string popcorn and cranberries. If you want to have a more traditional holiday this year, I suggest animal entrails.
This is ancient history, far predating the Bible or the birth of Jesus. Today, we cover our lawns with light-up nativity scenes, place glittering stars on the top of our trees to signify the Star of Bethlehem, and sing hymns about a baby born in a humble manger. But Yuletide historically has very little to do with the birth of Christ.
So how did Jesus get attached to Christmas? That happened long after these winter festivals. So it was in the 300s AD when the Emperor Constantine was trying to unify Rome under one god. And Constantine had converted to Christianity, and he was trying to sell Jesus and Christianity to the masses. The thing that's important to note about Christianity is that in the Bible, the birth of Jesus gets very little ink. In fact, if it was important that we know his birthday, they would have told us in the Bible. But instead, there's just one little clue. It's in the Luke chapter where it says, shepherds lay sleeping out, keeping watch over their flock by night. And the angel of the Lord appeared before them and they were petrified. In that area of the world, Bethlehem, shepherds would stay out with their flock all night long in the spring, summer, and fall. The only season we can rule out, according to the Bible, is winter. That's the only one that we can rule out as far as when Jesus was born. Not that it matters, but Jesus was born a commoner, and commoners back then didn't track their birthdays. Only royalty did that. So Jesus's birth story is not really important to Christianity so much. It's the Easter story. That's the thing that the whole religion hinges on, right? The death and resurrection. Everyone's born, but nobody dies and comes back. That's what defines Christianity. So the Easter story has tons of ink, tons of words on what happened and everything leading up to it. That's the thing that the whole religion hinges on.
But Emperor Constantine was determined to sell Christianity to a polytheistic society. And if Jesus was the son of the one true God, the king of all kings, the emperor of the cosmos, he needed a birthday.
He already knew Saturnalia was this raging party between December 17th and 23rd. Can't mess with that. The people would revolt like you wouldn't believe. And they had December 25th was Sol Invictus Day, where they worship the sun god. In the Julian calendar, December 25th was the winter solstice. That was the day that they worshiped the sun god because the sun starts to return after that day. Yes, it's the shortest day, but every day thereafter, it's going to be a little bit more. And so he said, all right, that's the perfect day to, make the birthday of the Son of God. So it was the Emperor Constantine way back when that decided December 25th will be the birth of Jesus. But it was not a big deal. It was just a day to put on the calendar. It was not celebrated. It was nothing at all like it is today. It was just, that's the birth of Jesus. And that's how we landed on December 25th. The pagan part of it continued and still continues to this day to many degrees. But what's important to note is that the holiday includes everyone. It's supposed to.
Nature does not discriminate. Winter doesn't care who you worship or what holidays you do or do not celebrate. Frost, snow, and storms affect us all. This is supposed to be a unifying time of the year, a time of survival, a time where we hunker down, keep out of the elements, cuddle up by the fire for warmth, take shifts tending to the hearth, and focus on outwitting the elements.
It makes sense that there are monsters lurking, and it's a time that we stay inside, we have idle hands, we share the stories of the monsters that are coming around midwinter, around the solstice, and various countries have had some pretty significant answers to those monsters.
The most famous of the Christmas monsters hails from Austria and Germany. He is the counterpart to Saint Nicholas, and he has been terrorizing children for centuries.
Krampus, by far, is the most famous, and he shows up on December 5th, Krampusnacht, and he shows up with St. Nicholas to dole out punishment to all the naughty kids. He might just hit them with a switch of sticks, or if they're bad enough, he's going to snatch them up and bring them back to his cave and kill them. He's a monster. He's covered in fur. He's got horns. He's got a long red forked tongue. He's wrapped in chains so you can hear him coming, and he carries a scratchy sack where he'll stuff the children inside. He's absolutely frightening. In Austria, too, if Krampus was a little strong for your taste, the same region also gave us Belschnickel, which is Nicholas in furs. And Belschnickel, each village would have one, and you could take turns being the Belschnickel each year. So he's got like soot on his face because he's dirty. He carries a switch of sticks, and he's covered in this patchwork of furs. And he'll show up at your door a few weeks before Christmas and knock on the door, and you'll invite him in. And he'll say, are there any naughty children here? And you might point to your daughter and say, well, little Mary here's been an angel all year, but Johnny, not so much. And Belschnickel will take Johnny out back, tie him to a tree, and beat his ass. Just beat him and whip him with a switch of sticks, and he'll cry and he'll scream, but he'll get right, and he can still get some presents in time for the Christmas holiday. And then next year, it could be your turn to be the Belschnickel, and you can beat my kids. Sort of beautiful, really.
The important thing to note in regards to Krampus and Belschnickel is that they are not the enemy or foil to St. Nicholas, but rather his cohorts.
It's the original good cop, bad cop. And the other thing that people need to remember, especially Americans, is that for most of Europe, St. Nicholas and Santa Claus are two different people. And so if in your head you didn't know that, separate them now. For the rest of this discussion, let's think about that. Split them apart.
Whether or not you believe in Santa Claus, St. Nicholas was a real person. He was a bishop from the land of Myra, modern-day Turkey. He was renowned for his abundant generosity, love for children, the impoverished, and sailors.
He was born wealthy, and he gave all of his money away. That's what brought him joy. He gave dowries to young women that didn't have any. He threw gold coins through windows of the poor. He left presents and gold out for people that needed it. That's what gave him joy. And many miracles were attributed to him over time. And so by the time he passed away on December 6th, he was already being called a saint by the people, even though the church didn't recognize him as a saint for quite some time. At some point, there were more churches named after Nicholas than all of the apostles. So Nicholas is this very popular character who comes around on December 6th, that's his day, to deliver presents to the good girls and boys. The night before, he comes around with Krampus. And Krampus keeps St. Nicholas's hands clean. He deals with the naughty kids while Nicholas rewards the good kids. So those two are separate. Santa wouldn't come along till really like the latter half of the 1800s, but more on him soon.
When you think of Christmas monsters, it's natural for Krampus to come to mind. But he's not alone. There are a whole host of other beasts who hunt and feast throughout the Yuletide season.
So Krampus is the most famous of the Yuletide monsters, and that's only because he's had movie deals, right? Multiple movie deals. He now rides in limousines and eats in restaurants we can't afford to get into. So he's the most famous, but he's not the most dangerous or the most dastardly. I think that award goes to Iceland. Iceland has got monsters that are so much worse than Krampus. Krampus, you can avoid Krampus easy enough. Just behave, be good, and you don't have to worry about it. But in Iceland, they have the Grýla. And the Grýla doesn't discriminate. Good, bad, makes no difference. If your kids are outside, she's going to snatch them up. She's going to bring them back to her mountain lair. She's going to cut them into pieces, cook them in a stew, and eat them. That's what you have to watch out for if you're in Iceland. Now, I was in Iceland just this past summer, and I was there on the summer solstice, where the sun didn't really set. And it's hard to sleep when the sun doesn't set. If you go there on the winter solstice, the sun doesn't rise. It's just night all the time. And you have to understand about Iceland, when it was first settled in the late 800s, there were no people there. It was just an empty land, but there were trolls and there were elves and there were all manner of fey folk. But then the Danish people and the Nordic people arrived and started to build towns and villages and farms and so on. And all those creatures got pushed up into the mountains where they had to bide their time until the winter solstice comes. And when winter comes and it's dark and cold and dangerous outside, you tell your children you have to stay inside because those monsters are coming for you. The Grýla is out there. And you tell the story well. You tell it as graphically as you can because you want your children scared to be wandering out into the mountains on perpetual darkness on cold winter nights. It's dangerous. And does it matter if your kid dies from exposure or the Grýla at the end of the day? That's the time to stay inside.
Grýla is an icon, an ugly, evil, child-eating ogre witch who leads a terrible gang called the Yule Lads. The Yule Lads are her 13 sons, a devilish group of naughty ne'er-do-wells who descend on towns at Christmas time to create chaos and make mischief. If you're a good child, the Yule Lads may treat you by leaving a small present in your shoe. However, if you are wicked and insolent, you will receive an old, rotten potato instead. In addition to the Yule Lads, Grýla has one more frightful crony, a cat, her familiar known imaginatively as the Yule Cat.
And the Yule Cat has got his own story. On Christmas Day, you have to lay out new clothes that you got for Christmas. And if you don't, the Yule Cat will come and kill you. You need to have and display your new Christmas clothes or else. And the Yule Lads show up over the span of 2 weeks. And each one arrives on a different day and then stays for 2 weeks. So your house gets pretty crowded over time as the Yule Lads start to show up. And the Yule Lads are, each one has a different a different skill set, I guess you'd call it. So on the first day, December 12th, you've got the sheepcoat clod, and he's going to come and mess with your sheep. Beware. And then the second day, you've got Gullygawk, who's going to come and steal your cow's milk. You've got a spoon licker that's going to come lick the spoons inside your kitchen and get the food off them. Pot scraper, same idea. Skyr gobbler, who's going to eat the skyr, which is a type of Icelandic yogurt. There's a door slammer, a doorway sniffer, and a candle eater. There's all these various creatures that are coming each day during December to wreak havoc on your house. And this is a time, you've got really about 2 solid weeks in December where you have to worry about all these various magical creatures and the Grýla, the worst of the monsters.
Wales, a country in southwest Great Britain, is known for its stunning coastlines, medieval castles, rugged countryside, and of course, dragons, mermaids, and fairies. But did you know that Wales is also host to a horrifying Christmas monster?
In Wales, they have the Mari Lwyd, it means gray mare. And around the holidays, she rises from the grave and she's got handlers that takes her door to door where there's like a call and response and they get inside. And once they get inside, they're going to make a little mischief, but you have to offer them treats and alcohol. And they'll stay for a few minutes and then they'll go to the next house. The Mari Lwyd has got a horse's skull as a head and the jaw will clack, clack, clack. And it's covered in a white sheet, a white ghostly sheet. Ignore those human legs that you see sticking out from the bottom. That's purely a coincidence, I'm sure. There can't possibly be a person under there holding all this up. But they go door to door and there could be multiple Mari Lwyds that come around. And they're going to collect their treats and their alcohol from each door. And then they go to the next one and the next one and the next one, and they get quite drunk by the end of the night. This is a festival that got popular in just a couple of southern Welsh towns, and it almost went away. But since the internet and since the story started to spread, Mari Lwyd has really made a comeback, especially in Wales, but also elsewhere. There's now Mari Lwyd societies. There's people that will teach you how to make the horse heads. People are putting light bulbs now into the eye sockets of the horse skulls. And they're creating these really intricate costumes covered in ribbons and making sounds and bells and appearing in some of the Yuletide parades alongside figures like Krampus and other monsters that are just becoming more and more popular.
The thing about Christmas monsters is that they're ancient, historic, and yet largely forgotten, replaced by a much more palatable and jolly mythical creature.
These monsters have been around for a long time in various forms, but they went away in the early 1900s because Santa Claus pushed them out. Not his fault, right? But Santa Claus popped up around the time of the Civil War when he was drawn in Harper's Magazine as someone that was handing out presents to the soldiers during the U.S. Civil War. And then he kept evolving his image, and then there was a poem by Thomas Nast called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" that really defined who Santa is. It defined his reindeer, that he giggles, he's got a bowl full of jelly as a belly, and we learned a lot about Santa from that poem. But then it was the Coca-Cola company that really defined what Santa looks like. And if you close your eyes right now and picture Santa Claus, you're picturing a derivative of the image that Coca-Cola put out during the Great Depression. They used them to sell Coke, to create this sort of packaged nostalgia. And the crazy thing is it worked. People bought more Coke. And then other businesses said, wait a minute, Coca-Cola doesn't own Santa Claus. We could use him. Imagine if you have a business or service and you can get the world's biggest celebrity to endorse your product for free. And they did. And Santa became an icon of the holidays. We got out of the Great Depression. And the only way to get out of an economic downturn or depression, of course, is to spend money. That's it. And so it worked. And at that point, Christmas became commercialized. It became about Santa, about giving gifts. The United States government moved the date of Thanksgiving. It used to always be the last Thursday in November, but retailers said, no, we need more Christmas shopping time. So they made it the fourth Thursday in November. So they even moved Thanksgiving to make way for this critically important to the economy holiday and figure called Santa. And if it's all about buy for all your kids and all your loved ones, there's no space left for monsters like Krampus and like Belschnickel and like Grilla and all these other ones. They had to get pushed into the dark recesses, but they weren't dead. They were waiting. And I'm here to say they're coming back. They're coming back because they're getting movie deals. They're showing up in pop culture, and we're talking about them again, because they serve us at the end of the day. They were the consequence. The monsters are the consequence. When I was growing up, I was told, be good or Santa will bring you less presents. Or if you're really bad, you get coal and sticks in your stocking. Coal and sticks, who cares, right? Who cares if you get coal and sticks in your stocking for a year of being bad? But imagine if I was told, Yeah, you're going to be in your snuggly little bed, and this hairy monster with a long forked tongue is going to rip you from your bed, stuff you in a sack, bring you back to his mountain lair, and kill you. That's a consequence. That's a monster. That's a monster worth talking about and worth knowing about.
But enough of Santa, presents, Coca-Cola, and commercialization. Let's head back to the woods on a dark, snowy night and meet Jeff's favorite of the Christmas beasts.
So my heritage is French, and in France, they've got Père Fouettard. Père Fouettard's backstory is absolutely gruesome and awful. So during the time of St. Nicholas, the story goes that 3 children were lost in a snowstorm, and they finally made their way to a village, and they saw a building with a light on, and it was the local butcher. And they went inside looking for shelter and said, can we please stay here till the storm passes? The butcher looked at the children, and then he looked at his empty shelves with nothing to sell, and he said, sure you can. Come on in the back. And he killed them, and he cut them up into meat, and he put their meat out into salting tubs. St. Nicholas happened by a short while after that, and he sensed something was wrong, so he goes into the butcher shop, and he sees the salted meat, and not only knows what that is, but knows who that is, because he's St. Nicholas. And he looks at the butcher, and he looks at the meat, and through the magic of St. Nicholas, he's able to reconstitute the meat back into the children, and they're going to be okay, and he's going to get them help. But then he looks at this cannibalistic butcher, and he says, this is not all right. From now on, you're going to work for me. No more cutting and killing and eating children. From now on, you're Père Fouettard, Father Whipper. You'll only beat the children that I tell you to beat. And he became very much like a Belschnickel character for France. He would go around at the behest of St. Nicholas, and he would whip the naughty children.
Just like Krampus or Grilla, Père Fouettard serves as the reckoning. Be good, for goodness sake. Don't talk to strangers. Don't be out in the nighttime. Be good little boys and girls and mind your adults. It's not about being on the nice list. It's about not ending up in a mad butcher's salting tub. Yes, it might seem severe. Yes, it is totally terrifying. But sadly, it's not completely unrealistic. But if chopping up children is too much for you, let's travel to the 1800s and allow one of the most prolific authors of all time to take their own crack at a Christmas story.
If you think about it, everything we know about how we're supposed to feel about Christmas was taught to us in a ghost story. Possibly the greatest ghost story ever written by a master, right? Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. It's fair to say he really invented Christmas. Like, yes, it was around before, but the whole notion of like, let's give to the poor, let's help the needy, let's reconnect with our families. But more than anything is the story of redemption, that you can be redeemed in a single night, but only if you face the gauntlet. You can't just say like, oh, it's Christmas, I should be a better person. That doesn't work. Scrooge had to face his former partner, had to see Jacob Marley and realize like, oh my gosh, this is my destiny if I don't change my ways. Then he had to, and then much worse than that, he had to face his past, had to face his present and his inevitable future. And that frightened him to the point where he woke up and he changed in a single night. And that is the promise of this holiday. You can be redeemed. You can find hope. You can change. You can be good to your fellow human beings. You can change your ways all in a single night, but only if you're haunted. Only if you're scared, only if you go down into the darkest parts of yourself and you come out the other side. And the reason that story endures is because we realize at the end of the story who Scrooge is. You have that moment at the very end where you go, oh no, I know who Scrooge is. He's me. I'm Scrooge. I'm getting older and crankier and miser and humbug and get off my lawn, But if Scrooge can change, I can change.
When A Christmas Carol came out, Christmas was not a national holiday. People went to work and school on Christmas Day. A Christmas Carol was written in 1843. But Christmas did not become a bank holiday in the UK until 1871, 28 years after the release of the book.
In America, it took even longer because that book hadn't really made the rounds yet because Dickens refused to come to America while slavery was still legal. But after the Civil War ended, Dickens brought his masterpiece over, and even then, you had to go to school, you had to go to work on Christmas Day. But pretty soon, that story took hold, and people started getting the day off, and people started getting turkeys. No one ate turkeys at Christmas. Like, that became a thing thanks to Charles Dickens. And it spread to the point where the U.S. government made it a national holiday on December 25th. And it just got bigger and bigger from there. And then when it became important to the economy as well, forget it. Christmas was off to the races, and it became the single biggest consumer event of the entire year in this country and in many other countries as well. It's that important.
But what kicked it all off? A ghost story.
A scary ghost story from Christmases long, long ago, which made sense. So when you think about what you're doing today, now when I hang a wreath on my front door, a wreath that I make myself now, by the way, and I love that when I put it up, it has serious meaning. When I used to just put it up because my dad did it, my dad's dad did it, I put it up because it does keep the bad spirits outside and it does keep the good cheer inside. I do it because I'm connecting to a tradition that goes back thousands of years to countries I've never even been to and people I never knew. But it makes sense to me, and it feels very primal, and it feels very connected. And so I put the lights on my house because it's going to be a long, dark night, and I want to be a beacon. If you get lost and you need someplace to go, you can find my home, and I'll take you in because you do the same for me. And I want to reinvent myself that time of year. I want to wake up transformed because I faced the scary things that are all around, whether it's Visa bills or monsters or our own, shortcomings in the past year or throughout our lives. Those are the things that can really make a difference. But we can't do it without the help of being afraid, without the monsters, without the ghosts, without all the things that go with this really dangerous time of year.
Christmas monsters serve as a cautionary tale. For 5-year-olds, it's be good, or Krampus will beat you with a stick, or the Grilla will eat you up for dinner. For 35-year-olds, it's be good, or the police will come for you. Folklore, myths, and legends are metaphors for very real dangers and horrors. And their lessons and messages are truly timeless and ageless. This Christmas, as you lay out offerings of cookies and milk for a jolly, rotund, sleigh-riding sprite, I urge you to check your doors, close your curtains tight, and make sure you spare a thought for the darker Christmas creatures. For you never know what brutish beasts may be waiting in the shadows for you. It has been such a treat to spend this fine Christmas Eve with you all. I would like to say a massive thank you to our friend Jeff for sharing these festive tales with us. It is always a joy and an honor to have you on the show. Don't forget to pick up your copy of The Fright Before Christmas. This beautiful book is full of ghastly tales, gory spirits, and the most chilling illustrations. It is the perfect gift for any Christmas lover and a must-have addition to your home library. If you want to learn more about other brutish beasts, head on over to the West London Witch Patreon and enjoy an additional episode covering more terrifying tales, history, and the true, not safe for work story behind the Christmas classic, Jingle Bells. If you're not a Patreon member, why not treat yourself to a Christmas present and come join us? I would love to see more friends in our little coven. One last thing before I let you all head back to your Christmas present wrapping and mulled wine. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of our amazing listeners. To you, for your support through 2024. I hope you all have a magical holiday season and a very safe New Year. From all of us here at the West London Witch, I wish you a very merry and bright Christmas full of love, laughter, abundance, and blessings. Until next year, merry meet, merry part, and a very Merry Christmas. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Struzina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.